All right, good to have you back. Let's continue our build-up to the budget. This morning, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana will deliver his maiden speech at 2 o'clock this afternoon. He has the difficult task of explaining how exactly government does plan to service its debts and its people. So let's head back now to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And Gareth, I know you have Leon Louw from the Free Market Foundation to help us just unpack some of these issues.
Yeah, that's right. Welcome back to the JSE. We're going to see what the numbers are looking like a little later today as we get closer and closer to that finance budget speech coming out from the Finance Minister. 2 p.m, of course, live here on eNCA. We'll see what those markets are looking like. We can expect some reaction, of course, what's happening with the local currency versus the major currencies, the euro, the dollar and the British pound. But that is a conversation for later. Speaking of markets, let's bring into the conversation from the Free Market Foundation, Mr. Leon Louw. Mr. Louw, always good to have you with us. So, what are you expecting? Because I have two thoughts on the budget. It's one thing to talk about the money we don't have as a country. Two, where and how do we use that money?
Yes, the answer to that is much less complicated than people imagine. You just look around the world at what works. What are the winning nations and what are the losers? And the winning nations do one simple thing. They follow the Economic Freedom of the World Index. If you have a higher score on it, you do better, you grow, you have jobs, you have investment. And if you have a lower score, you do badly. More importantly, if you're moving upwards, even if you start low, like China, or you're moving downwards, even if you start high, like America. If you start high and you go down, you stagnate. If you start low and you go up, you boom, you prosper. And so that's what we have to do. We have to actually reduce the role of government. We have to reduce government spending. We have to reduce the deficit, which is now approaching 100% of GDP, and then we will boom and prosper. It's really that simple. And this was promised in the State of the Nation address. So the big test of this budget is, will it resonate with the State of the Nation address, which promised removal of red tape, investor-friendly atmosphere, cutting of government spending, and then the other big thing, it was promised over and over again we would get zero-based budgeting. Why is that never mentioned anymore? What happened to it?
What would that be? Just
that means that every government department is not presumed to be justified to what it now has. It has to fully justify every cent it spends de novo, as if it doesn't exist. If it didn't exist, what would it do? Why would it need to exist? And what would its functions be? Now, this was promised. We were told it was well advanced, and we were told it would be in by last year. Now it's never mentioned anymore. So will we hear about that? I doubt it. Will we hear about cutting the budget, cutting the deficit? I think we will. We hear every year that it will be cut in the future, and it's always in the future. It's always 2 years hence that it will be cut. And I remember Joe Slovo once joked with me. He said, people say I've given up Marxism. He says, no, I haven't. I still think that there's going to be a revolution. And I say it's 5 years hence, and I've been saying that for 50 years. So he used to joke about it. This is them. They keep telling us red tape reduction is in the future. Zero-based budgeting in the future. Cutting the deficit is in the future. Cutting wasteful SOEs is in the future. It's never now. So let's hope this budget for once says we have done something.
Yeah. Speaking of government control, and this might be erring a little off of the budget speech a little bit. Let me get your thoughts on this. The president coming out and saying it's up to the private sector to create jobs.
Yes.
Is that a handoff from government saying we actually don't know what we're doing, let private industry take over, or is that exactly what you're calling for, less government control over jobs?
Well, it's extraordinarily insightful. I mean, it's sort of obvious. For the government to create a job, it must take the money out of the private sector. Every rand it spends is a money that's been taken from somewhere. From who? From the private sector. So what you're saying is leave the money in the private sector. It is better at creating jobs with it than the government. If it takes it away, the private sector jobs are lost. And then will the government create as many or more jobs with that same money? Government doesn't create money. It doesn't generate wealth. It takes wealth. So he's absolutely right. If you want to have job creation, You have to leave the wealth with the job creators, and those are the private sector.
I've been asking all the guests that have been so kind to join me, Leon, here at the JSE this morning. The Finance Minister, I know, putting on the final touches to his speech. He's left a paragraph open. I know he hasn't finished it. He's giving that paragraph to you, Leon Louw, from the Free Market Foundation. What does the Finance Minister write down today?
He writes down saying that the past has been a legacy of promises that were never fulfilled. In every SONA, every budget speech, every ministerial budget, this time is new. This is different. This time what we promise will happen, and what's more, we've actually done things that were promised in the past. That will be the turning point for South Africa on the road to prosperity.
Leon, I always appreciate speaking to you. Nice to have you in person as well, not have you on a computer